Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the release of The Batman, which opened up to over $249 million worldwide. Could potentially, even when all of the numbers get updated and we get the actuals tomorrow or Tuesday, could even bump up to maybe $250 million or more. Pretty impressive opening, to say the very least. Definitely did not do as well domestically as some were indicating, as again Box Office Pro had the number around $150 million. This is obviously coming in $30 million less domestically, but the strong showing in the international marketplace definitely means a pretty good sign for this film, especially since it is going to be releasing at some point in communist China, because Warner Brothers, as many other studios have been doing, are working with the commies, making sure they get millions upon millions of dollars to fund their human rights violations. I just had to get that out right out of the way. But before going any further into this bit of news, please make sure you smash that like button, live that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel. Don't even know if what I just said made any sense. Hopefully it did, but as we can see, The Batman indeed made over $220 million overseas in the international market. Add that to around $129 million that it is made domestically, and you are looking at a film that is doing quite well. At the very least, it is the best performing opening weekend for a Warner Brothers release since 2019. And not just since 2019, since 2019's Joker. That is a long time for this film, rather a long time for this studio to be doing well in any capacity. And as you all know, it was one of the biggest losing studios of last year. And some may try to argue to say, well, you know, what about the HBO Max numbers there? But as far as the actual box office, as far as how much they put into their films and how much they got back from pure box office, it was the most the losingest studio. It had the most financial losses based on just the actual numbers, the raw numbers themselves. So it's very important for them to not only have this film do as well as it's doing, but they really just need any film to be doing well. They need a win in some category, in some way. And obviously this is, I would say, definitely something that they were looking to, and it's doing better than what they had initially projected for the film. Again, even though it did underneath what Box Office Pro has done. I mentioned in my breakdown of that Box Office Pro tends to have different numbers than the typical industry standards and what the studio comes out with, because they base it off of a lot of other things. They have their own algorithm, they have their own formulas for calculating those things, and so that's why sometimes it's higher than what we see, sometimes it's lower. Typically it's a little bit higher, but that's the reason why you're seeing that discrepancy there from what I had mentioned in a previous video. And again, that was just reporting on the Box Office Pro numbers, but we now actually have some real numbers to crack down, some real numbers to break down rather. And as I mentioned, it's very impressive for this film, as it's now at the point about being halfway to the point of breaking even. So that is definitely quite impressive for it. One thing I do want to say in relationship to another film is Uncharted. So I had mentioned in my Geeks and Gamers video, which is probably going to be up around the same time or a little bit later or even earlier than the video you're watching right now, but I mentioned saying that the film updated, the international numbers may not have updated because I wasn't finding them. Well, actually I updated as soon as I was able to refresh the article. Sure enough, there it is, and it actually is including, so the numbers from the numbers is including the international numbers at this point, which is very confusing because I don't know why the numbers has the international update for Uncharted, but then doesn't have the international numbers at all for the Batman. I don't quite understand how the numbers works and how their numbers update, and who's in charge of updating their numbers. But the 271.6 is actually what it has made thus far, meaning that the break-even number is going to be maybe one more week away. Again, I thought that it had the chance to be able to get to that point this weekend, but the Batman just dominated the market, especially domestically, so much that there really was no room for any other film, including Uncharted, to make that much money. However, I will say that 50% drop you're seeing, where it made another $17.4 million overseas, is definitely still, again, it's more money being added on, $171.3 million internationally, definitely quite impressive there. It still needs to make another $30 million, which I think it'll be able to eke out both domestically, internationally, when you add those together by the end of next weekend. And I do still project that this film will make some profit. Based on the numbers, as we were projecting them last week, it did say that the likelihood of this film making money was very good, but it was making a little bit of money to making a pretty decent amount of money. Never going to be a massive hit as far as, huge box office number return return, to say the very least, for this Sony release. But the Batman is indeed doing quite well. Again, doing the best that Warner Brothers has seen during the entire pandemic era, and continuing to just, again, I always love to see, continuing to just destroy the pandemic narrative, as we still see, again, even though the fear-mongering has changed and shifted a little bit, because now the focus is different. Again, it's election season after all, and it's an election year after all. So even though we're seeing similar rates and similar death rates, etc., it doesn't matter, because apparently people are still wanting to go see films, certain films, and then not wanting to go see other films, which is what I've been saying for a while at this point. So it's really not all that surprising to see these numbers and to see the film doing as well as it is, while other films are not doing as well. So though they might try and blame the pandemic for other films not doing well, they kind of run out of excuses when it comes to films like this. So the Batman, $128.5 million domestically. Again, very impressive opening weekend number for that. Uncharted at $11 million at their 3 weeks of release, a 52% drop, so not terrible. However, not nearly as good as was being expected, I think, at least by me. I thought the film might have held on just a little bit longer, a little bit stronger. We'll have to, of course, wait and see what those numbers look like next week. I think it'll hit the break-even point by next weekend when you add all the numbers together, but we will have to wait for those numbers to come in. Dog has actually hit the point where it's now broken even and making some profit, so kudos to Dog for doing that. The film from United Artists, another $6 million there. Spider-Man No Way Home at $4.4 million, still holding on, 24% drop, up to $786 million domestically, which is just quite insane. Probably will be able to surpass 790. Will it get to the point of getting close to 800 million? I think that there's a chance, but obviously it is starting to drop out of some theaters. But after 12 weeks of release, even if it doesn't hit $800 million domestically, still impressive nonetheless. Coming in at number 5 is Death on the Nile with $2.7 million, a 39% drop. So this film definitely, as you can see, over 800 screens it dropped from. The chances of this film being able to pull out a W, just not very likely at this point. Sing 2, however, continues to overperform. 11 weeks in, 32% drop, another $1.5 million. Again, still at over 2,000 screens. This little engine that could film still doing well enough with families to be able to make a little bit of money. Jackass Forever also hanging around with 57%. Cyrano coming in at number 8 with 51% drop, and I don't quite understand what United Artists is doing with this movie. This film needs to make a pretty decent amount to break even, and even though it says 12 weeks of release, the film had a wide release supposedly last week, so it's now in its second week of being a wide release. It doesn't quite make a lot of sense to me, and so because of that, the projections on this film just don't look good, because even though its per theater count is a little bit better than some of the other films on this list, it's just not being opened in enough theaters for it to be able to get anywhere close to the number it needs to break even. So I just don't know what they're thinking on with this movie and what their game plan is, because even if they're proud of it, if they're not making money off of it and they're not even getting a return on their investment, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Scream 5 coming in at number 9 this week at 57% drop there. And again, this film, even 8 weeks into release, is still hanging around, but it's almost out. Again, 713 screens it dropped from, only at around 853 screens. So I'd say this probably has a couple weeks left in it before it's out of theaters altogether, but it made its money back and it was able to please enough people for it to make money. And so I'm sure that's going to justify them continuing on the franchise, though I think that at this point they really should just put the franchise to bed. And then coming in at the number 10 spot this week is Marry Me, which dropped 72% because they dropped it out of a lot of theaters after only 4 weeks of release. This was, of course, a release that was meant specifically for Valentine's Day. It did okay for Valentine's Day, and even though it's about 6 million in the red and so close to breaking even, still not quite where it needs to be if it wants to hit that point. And then just coming in at number 11 to Studio 666 in its second week of release, saw a 78% drop, so no one's going to see this film. It was not in a lot of theaters, but even the theaters that it was in, not just not doing really as well. Don't quite understand what they were thinking with that. As we go into the individual films, as you can see, the Batman, $128.5 million domestically. We'll see if those numbers get a little bit higher after the actuals come in either tomorrow or Tuesday. So that'll be interesting to follow. But again, I don't know why the numbers has not updated the number for the international. That's the reason why I was thinking that this 271 was maybe not up to date, but turns out it actually is according to the deadline. So $271.5 million puts this film still a little ways out from break breaking even. Dog at 44.1 million has surpassed its break-even number and is therefore now making some profit. Spider-Man No Way Home, long past its break-even point, is up to $1.86 billion, likely to end around $1.9 billion, maybe even a little higher than $1.9 billion, which is quite insane. I think it's slowed enough now where I can say I don't think the film reached $2 billion, but hey, you never know. Death on the Nile is at $115 million, which, yeah, it might sound like, hey, it's still $100 million. That's got to be good, right? It had a higher price tag, and I don't quite understand what they spent the money on because there was some really bad CG choices for this movie, and I think they actually did some on-location filming, and I think they kind of ruined and destroyed that look because of their use of CGI, and so it sounds like they just wasted money on CGI when they could have just used some practical effects, spent a lot less money, still had the on-location shooting, and ended up having, at least a better looking film, though the writing, I think, is one of the worst parts of the film itself. I think that this is a movie that could have done a little bit better, maybe, had it not had those other things going on. Sing 2 is at $360 million worldwide. Again, just insane. Jackass Forever at $68.9 million. Cyrano is at $3.6 million internationally. Again, I don't know what their plan is for that movie. $137.5 million internationally for Scream 5, according to the numbers. Marry Me at $47 million, and Studio 666 now at $2.6 million. I don't understand. Also, the Foo Fighters, if you're going to do this, at least give me a budget to your film so that I can break down whether or not you're making any money or how far away you are from breaking even. I can't imagine that your film costs any more than maybe $10 million or so, maybe $5 to $10 million, maybe mini budget, micro budget potentially. So who knows? But I can't know until you release something. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Let's go ahead and look at the box office charting. So with The Batman being at $248.5 million worldwide, we're looking at around $150.9 million in the red. I suspect that will be cut quite the bit down over the next coming weeks because not only do we have the second week numbers that are going to be probably pretty strong hold, both internationally and domestically, but also it is going to be spring break for some places starting early as this week. I know that my school goes on spring break the following week. So these next couple weeks could be very good for The Batman as more students, more high school, college-age students are off of school. And this is a movie I think that's definitely going to be a lot more interesting to those groups. I think that you're going to have the potential for those students to be able to actually provide the extra bit of oomph that this is going to need at the box office to get to its $500 million break even. So because of that and because of that going on, plus it doing well at the box office and it also having some pretty strong reviews from audience members as well, I think that this film is definitely very likely to hit its break even point. Yes, I know that this date is not correct, but these numbers are indeed up to date as far as the recording of this video. $3.6 million for Cyrano after its second week of release wide. Again, technically wide release, still has it at 42.8 million in the red, and my projections have it staying around 40 million in the red. Who knows? I don't know what they're doing with that film, so I really can't say. Studio 666, who knows? I have no budget. I can't really say one way or another. Uncharted, though, is now at 17 million in the red, and I think that it's going to be able to make that up over the next couple of weeks, at least. Dog has indeed broken even with $44.1 million, now at 3.9 million of net gain profit, so good for you, Dog. Death on the Nile, $115 million, still 65 million in the red. I doubt that the film is going to be able to reach the point it needs to break even. Just not enough steam left in that boat. Marry Me at $47 million, only $6 million in the red. However, my projections did say that there was a chance that it could still end in the red, and it looks like it's dropping off enough to where that could still come out. Didn't really get a big number for Blacklight, so that film's still around 60 million in the red. Also, same news with Moonfall. With Jackass Forever, I was able to update that, so $26.3 million right now as far as net gain profit. Moonfall, going back to what I was saying earlier, still around almost $200 million in the red. Massive financial loss there. And then, of course, there are these other films that really haven't done much of anything, and so these numbers are just about the same. Scream 5, $46 million of actual net gain profit, so good for you. $88 million of net gain profit for Sing 2, as I said, very impressive there. And with Spider-Man No Way Home at $1.86 billion, man, $819 million of net gain profit, and that means that it almost doubled what it did after the first 2 weeks of its release. So since the first 2 weeks of its release, It's practically doubled its number, which is quite impressive. So what are y'all's thoughts about these numbers? Do you think The Batman is going to be able to hold on and to stay strong this coming week and the next couple weeks, and especially in its second week of release? Do you think it's going to have a massive drop-off, or do you think that it's going to hold? I think that it will. I think the $250 million opening is definitely a good indicator of the film doing well, but it does need to be said, as again, I always like to say, this film does indeed have a release set to be put out in China, which means that millions upon millions of dollars are going to be going to fund the Chinese Communist Party, and that's something that always deserves to be called out, as not just Warner Brothers, but Sony with Uncharted, among others, have, again, I've called out previously as well. Uncharted, again, being a film that's going to get that China release as well, likely will see some numbers bumped because of that, and I think that they need to stop. I think that they just need to stop working with them, because even though one could argue saying, well, the Chinese people, they deserve to be entertained, etc. Yeah, but the money's not going to them. The money is going to the Chinese Communist Party, and that deserves to be called out. So Warner Brothers, Sony, Disney especially, please get your act together. If you're going to be pulling movies, and I mentioned this in a video I made last week, if you're going to be pulling movies from Russia because of human rights violations, because of them invading Ukraine, you cannot possibly have these films released in China without having the same logic at play, because of everything going on in that country that's been going on for decades now. And I would say much worse things going on in that country than what we're seeing right now across in Europe. But what are y'all's thoughts about any of these films or anything else I mentioned? Please let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button, and honestly, you're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my March Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members. Starting off first with my Patreon members, animation commentator Brandon, let's go Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Fuzz Aldrin, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Hymir Ari Hymason, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Chat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Rosetta Allen, Stan Andrian, Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and of course Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Also a shout out to my Subscribe Star members, starting off with Trent Johnson, Matt 317, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson, Storm Tracker, The R, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. And a final shout out to my Locals members, Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson, and Robert Barnes. Thank you all so very much for being supporters, monthly supporters of the channel. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every single live stream and every single video, please check out the pinned, the very top link in the video description. It is noted as the Willow link there. It'll bring you to basically a link tree of all the different places that you can support on Patreon, Subscribe Star, or on Locals. And also there are other tiers that you can get access to as well, including an Army of Asgard level where you get not only the shout out, but you also get access to a giveaways channel that I have on my Discord, where you get offers of giveaways, or rather you get access to giveaways of 4K titles, Blu-rays, digital codes, all kinds of stuff, steelbooks. It's just, I'm giving away stuff all the time over there, and it's a lot of fun as well. So go check that out if you're interested. There's also the Keeper of the Bifrost level, which is the higher level up than that, and you get everything from the previous tiers. Plus, you get access to a once or twice a month podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where you get to ask us Q&A, right? You get to ask us questions, any question that you like, movie or non-movie related. We will answer them once, maybe twice a month. We're trying to work on a second opportunity for us to have a show, but right now it's That's at least once a month. So again, you get access with that with the Keep of the Bifrost level. And then there is the Chosen of Valhalla level, the very premium level, where you get access to all of those things. Plus, you get to be featured on the channel once a month with me and the other Chosen members, where we talk about movies and stuff. Anything really that the Chosen want to talk about. And it's always a very fun discussion. We usually have about 3.5 hour discussion. So again, that's what you get access to at the Chosen of Valhalla level. Also, you get a free t-shirt during your first month. All you need to do is just let me know what t-shirt you want from the store and also their size, location, etc. And I send those out anywhere in the world. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Thank you all so very much again for your love and for your support. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.